Welcome back to the Run Strong podcast. This is episode number 2, and if you haven't heard number 1 yet, go back to last week and you can catch the first one, which has gone out on the InnerFight show. We're also a standalone podcast at the moment. We're piggybacking along on the InnerFight show, but we will soon be on our own when it will become really important for you guys to go out and subscribe to us on iTunes and start to rate and review us. If you didn't catch the first show but want to know what we covered, then I'll quickly tell you now. We just went through the World Championships, the women's marathon. So that was 2 weeks ago now, maybe even 3. And then we discussed our question of the week, which was to do with sweat loss, which is obviously a common problem we face here in the hot climates. So if you want to go and listen to more about that, head back and find that one. This week we are, well, first of all, I'm solo. My wingman Rob Jones is currently on his way back from what was an incredible 5 days in the Jordan, Ultra X Jordan in the Wadi Rum desert over there. The 14 of our guys went over. Haven't got a full count up of the numbers yet, but we do know that Coach Rob came in in 4th, which is just amazing. 250 kilometers stage race over 5 days, and some really good runners were there with him. So for him to grab a 4th is just brilliant. And another one of our guys who came in the top 10 was Haysom, who is his first ever ultra and first ever multi-stage as well. He chose a hell of a race to go in for first time around, and he came in 7th, which is also just incredible. And what a cause he was doing it for. If you're not sure of what his cause was, head over to our Instagram page, scroll down a few, and you will find he's our first Ultra X athlete we introduced, Haysom, and he was doing it for Children in Need charity, which hopefully I think he has raised a really good amount of money for. And well, he must have just used that as absolute inspiration, because for him to come in 7th is truly amazing. He's really lived up to his potential there. So congrats to him, congrats to all the guys who got that done. It looked like an incredible week. If you haven't seen any of the coverage, our very own Marcus Smith was over there, and he was covering the race with Ultra X on their story. They gave him free reign of their Instagram account for the week, which is a very brave thing to do, but I think it really paid off for them, because it's one of the best cover of races I've ever seen, and probably you'll ever see. So go over there and go back through their story and their highlights, and it's really, really good. You get a very good insight into actually how it was and how difficult the race was on certain stages where there was like softer sand compared to harder trail. He was showing you, he was actually running parts of it with the competitors, and it made it for a really, really good coverage of that show, so of that race. So go over, check that out. They've also done some great roundup videos of each day, and basically if you don't want to run Ultra X Jordan next year, then something wrong with you, because it's even I want to do it. It just looked absolutely incredible. So today we've got 2 questions that we've had come in. We're going to answer those in a bit, but first of all, we've obviously got to just go through what's happened this weekend, because it has just been an unreal one. It's happened. 2-hour marathon has been broken. Eliud Kipchoge has, in the 1:59 Ineos Challenge, gone 1:59, I think 40 seconds. Now, to put that into perspective, that is basically 14-minute 5Ks back to back, I think 8 times. So just think about that, how mad that is. He's obviously been trying to get after this for a while. If you've watched any of the videos on it, the preparation he's put into it, the dedication, the humbleness that man has, I think, well, it goes without saying that there's no one deserves to have broken this record more than Eliud Kipchoge. It's absolutely unreal what he's managed to do. He crossed the line and was just, he could have carried on running by the look of him. He didn't even look fazed by it, and straight away he just made it all nothing about him. He just made it about showing people what they can actually achieve. And I think if any records have ever been broken for the right reason, this is a really, really big one to have done. What also went under the radar a little bit which I just wanted to chat about, was at Berlin Marathon a few weeks ago. There was the second ever fastest marathon run and nearly broke Kipchoge's record, who holds the record in a race situation. He now holds the world record in terms of a marathon, not in a race, but being allowed pacing, and obviously the car that was in front of him keeping him on pace and things. And there's been a little bit said about that, whether that's actually legitimate or not. First of all, I want to say it's definitely legitimate. His legs were moving. He was running it. There's no way you can take that away from him. But a few weeks ago, Berlin, the second fastest marathon behind Kipchoge's 2:01 something record, was run. And what was said was the guy's name, very hard to pronounce, but basically his last name is Bekele. He was 2 seconds off the record and ran with his shirt untucked. And they reckon if he tucked his shirt in or was wearing a tight-fitting top, he would have broken the record. Which, yeah, think about that. Then think what Kipchoge's just managed to do in taking a further minute and change off his already world record is just astounding. Really, really is. However, there is some controversy behind this record with the shoes that he's wearing, which, for those of you who don't know about it, basically they're the Nike 4%. They've been around a while now. They're very expensive shoes. Many people have bought them. I call them the moon boots. But apparently they are, well, they claim they're to be 4% faster than any other shoe, I believe, or give you 4% more return into the floor. What some people are saying is they're actually almost not fair for some people to be using them compared to others. They have a carbon plating, which basically when your foot contacts with the floor, it's taking the shock of the impact and almost giving back more than you could make without it. So it's propelling you forwards without you needing to use any extra muscle cost. And this is where there's a bit of controversy with it. Should it be allowed? But I think they should. I think they're not putting in a motor. They're not doing anything that no one else. Other companies can do this. I think Nike have got the patent for it, but other companies are now trying to do it. And basically, this carbon sole within the shoe sole is what's, well, we've just seen times drop with people wearing these, and they obviously do work if you've got the capacity to run in them, but you actually still have to obviously move your legs and put all the training in for them. And now he's broken the record in them. I think all the shoe companies are going to probably take a note from Nike's book and start doing it. Companies are already doing it. Moves on to my next point, which is the Ironman World Championships. Kona has just happened as well, and Jan Frodeno regained his title. The king has got his crown back on, as I put it. He ran in a set of Asics, which they're not released to the public yet. They're a prototype, but they're actually calling them the 4.5%, and they've done a very similar thing to Nike, although we don't know too much about them yet. But that just shows that already companies are copying and doing what Nike have done. And, well, not to take anything away from all these guys, their training and things, but they're clearly giving them an edge over competition. So, are we going to see a complete change in the shoe game? We don't know, but I think we're bound to see some more changes happening here. We're going to do a separate show for Kona on the InnerFight show. We're going to go through the before, the during, and the after. So more to come on that one. But yeah, Jan Frodeno regains his Kona crown. That happened this weekend, and Tim O'Donnell came in second, and Sebastian Kienle came in third. And the interesting point here is they all started the season with injuries. So I think it's an absolutely fantastic podium to see, because they've all had some controversy to get through, some injuries to come back from, and they've all worked so hard to get on that podium. And is it a case that we're seeing that maybe some pro Ironmans are just completely overtraining themselves and could have done with a bit more of either a longer off season or a longer break during the season? It's hard to say, but listen to the show we're going to do on that, and I'm going to go into that a little bit more detail. So that is basically the news from this week, which it's been a massive weekend for endurance. That I think there's a lot of people will remember this weekend for a long time. That was a world record, by the way, in Kona as well from Jan Frodeno, and it wasn't the fastest day there's ever been on the island as well. So it just really is incredible. So the questions we have this week, they're good. They not so much coming off the back of the last show. They're two separate questions. One is, we'll start with the first one. It's based around heart rate, and it's from Kim Smith. And what she would like to know is, at what point as a coach do we potentially say that a heart rate is dangerous, or how do we judge it to be in a dangerous zone? She naturally has a really high heart rate, but can stay there for a very long time and doesn't feel bad. She says, obviously, I don't feel bad to a point. I mean, I've obviously felt better. So she's saying she runs with a very high heart rate, and she does. But she doesn't feel like it's going out of control. She doesn't feel like she's going to get into trouble with it or, have a heart attack or anything like that. So she's asking, as a coach, when do we say, okay, that heart rate is too high, we need to back off? And it's a really good question because, it kind of made me think, when do I say that? I think, first of all, you've got to look at basically anyone going off the 220 minus your age theory or equation is very much stuck back in the 90s. That we pretty much know that isn't true. So first of all, if you're judging a high heart rate off 220 minus your age, which for those of you who don't know, 220 minus your age is supposedly meant to be your max heart rate, which it came out it was basically a way of scientists who were doing experiments for journals to come up with a way of establishing a max heart rate for the average person. Because really the only true way to establish a max heart rate is to push someone to maximum effort. When you're trying to get a journal or an article or a study cleared by ethics and published in a journal, they tend not to like you to be pushing members of the public to absolute max. So you've got to go through a sort of safety checklist. So if you want to do experiments on humans at all levels, you need a very non-invasive, sort of non-dangerous way of predicting what their max heart rate should be. Then you can perform, because you use heart rate for anything. It's not just in performance studies. It might be in like metabolic fueling studies, could be in how different ergogenic aids affect heart rate, things like that. So they're all based off percentage of max heart rate. So 220 minus age got basically just got used over and over and over again, and somehow became this gold standard way of measuring max heart rate, which, as we know now through the data collected, it's just simply not true. What you would find if you did look was a bell curved shape. So some people would more or less fall in and around the middle of the bell curve. So 220 minus age is roughly there. But then you'd have a lot of outliers either side. And those outliers either side, it just can't be ignored. The fact to the point where it's just been shown 220 minus age isn't accurate. Anyway, so the true way to find out max heart rate is to basically get to max, which isn't easy to do. A lot of that is said to be whether you can mentally push to your max. That is also to be said for VO2 max. Is how do you truly know your VO2 max? The only way to know it is to actually really go to your maximal output, and what gives in first, the muscles or the head. It's a really good topic. They discuss it a lot in the book Endure, which if you haven't read, you should. And it's a very good one to read or listen to. He's featured on a few podcasts with it. I won't go into too much detail on it, but basically that's how you can work out how if you're having a high heart rate or not. Then the next thing is to not compare it to anyone else's. So no two people are going to be the same. So if someone's high or someone's normal heart rate running is say 150 and they feel comfortable, they're breathing through their nose, they're not, they can have a conversation, then the person next to them is running at 160 and they're exactly the same position. They're comfortable, breathing through their nose, conversational pace, and they compare heart rates and they say, whoa, I'm 10 beats higher, but they both feel the same. Well, you can't then say, oh, well, the other person is either fitter because they've got a lower heart rate, or the other person's heart rate is too high because they're both the same perceived effort, and you don't know what both their maxes are or their resting is. So don't compare it to 220 minus your age. Don't compare it to anyone else's. The way to know, well, firstly, the scientific way to know is to have an ECG heart rate. Basically analyzes your heart rate and heartbeats. And what that can show you is if you've got any indications of heart rate issues. So like heart murmurs, basically where the heart might either miss some certain beats or have an extra beat in. You can then tell whether you've basically got a healthy heart muscle or not. So that would be the first place to start is getting cleared in that sense. Then you want to know basically if you've got a good idea of your resting heart rate and you've got a good idea of your heart rate when you run at normal easy levels. So like we were saying, maybe 150 and you're conversational, you're breathing fine, there's no issues. And then what you're running, what the heart rate's running at when you're working hard. So maybe like at a track session, you see your heart rate rise up maybe into the 170s, 180s. Once you've got those baseline figures, sort of coming from a coach's perspective, what I'm looking at, if someone goes out for a run and says, okay, today, Tom, I ran super easy, I felt fine, normally this heart rate would give me a 5 per K pace. Well, I was running at 5 per K pace, and instead of my heart rate being at 150, it was at 170, and my heart felt like it was racing, I felt a little bit dizzy. You might say, okay, fine, there's a sign that something's not quite right and your heart rate is running too high. Maybe go get a checkup if it repeats itself, or maybe if your resting heart rate was really high in the morning, but that could be a danger sign. However, again, we're judging this all based off heart rate monitors. So make sure your heart rate monitor strap is on tightly, fitting well, batteries charged, not reading heart rate off the wrist, although they are getting better. They're still not very accurate when exercising. There's a few things to check through basically before you can start saying you're in a danger zone. When you're seeing heart rates go above levels that you've never seen before, you've really just got to go off how you feel. So straight away, my mind would jump to, is the heart rate monitor accurate? Because if a heart rate does fly up and you're in a sort of danger zone of your heart rate is in a danger zone, you're going to know it before I either know it reviewing a run or anyone else knows it, because you'll feel it being way too high. Sometimes you feel it out here with like the heat and the humidity, or some people have felt it in saunas before. The heart rate just goes into kind of feels like a spasm, but it just goes way, way too high. Then you'd know you're in a danger zone. You'd obviously feed back to the coach and they'd say, okay, right, well, we know now that above 190 feels like that for you, so let's not go there, or make sure you get checked out and check it up. But the real answer to this is, as a coach, it's hard to know. You're basically going off data that's being collected, but hopefully there's a few ways that you can sort of see whether you think your heart rate is too high or not. But it's not uncommon. Like, there's a few athletes I coach and regularly their heart rate's going way above 200. I haven't seen my heart rate above 200 for a long time now, and more commonly than not, most people struggle to get up into the 190s. It's like high to mid 190s. It's quite rare to see, but it does happen. So yeah, that's my answer to that. It's a bit of a tough one to answer, but basically it's purely on feel. If it feels too high and you feel like your heart rate's in trouble, you're feeling tight chest pains or anything like that, then you need to come down quite soon and not continue. Your body will self-regulate that as it is. So there's your answer for that, Kim. And no getting out of training just because you've got a high heart rate. We know you have, so we continue to work with it. The next question is from Zad's Sulfikar, who, if you listen to the old InnerFight Endurance Q&A shows, was Zad.z, who would send in questions quite often, and he is delighted that this show is back in a podcast format. He said, mate, I missed your weekly Q&As. It's back now in podcast form. Here's my question. In interval sessions for runners, sometimes coaches design sessions with similar distance and intensity, but a different recovery. Sometimes it's a jog, sometimes it's a walk. Sometimes it's a float, sometimes it's just stop. In all these variants, sometimes heart rate comes down back to low zones, and sometimes not. I believe it means each variant gives different gains. Can you please explain a bit of it? Looking forward to some more geeky stuff. Well, Zads, I like that you've slipped the word gains in there. Yes, we're always looking for different gains within interval sessions. So we've got a few different types of interval. We use intervals a lot on our InnerFight Endurance program, and they're either going to be based around threshold heart rate, speed, aerobic intervals, strength intervals, or run economy intervals. So we'll start with threshold. These intervals tend to either be short in rest, so you would spike your heart rate and then you'd give a short rest and then go again. You're sort of keeping your heart rate up either just above threshold and then just below in your recoveries, not letting it drop down too much, or you'd look to lengthen the rest out, but you'd lengthen also the interval based at threshold as well. So I'll give you some examples here. Would be something like if you wanted to work at threshold heart rate, you would go say like a 6 to 10 minute interval working around threshold heart rate, which is what we would describe threshold as being your lactate threshold heart rate, which is where your body is working at its maximal aerobic capacity. And then you'd have a rest time, which would allow the muscles to recover, but then allow you to work again at that 10 or 6 to 10 minute threshold heart rate. You can push these longer. Technically, threshold should be about your hour-long interval, but during training, we don't want to be fatiguing you too much. So we use intervals basically to help to make sure you're recovering and to get quality out of the session, not just absolutely destroy you. So essentially, the longer the threshold interval, the longer rest you'd need. Otherwise, the muscles aren't going to recover in time, and it'll be more difficult for you to be holding the correct pace or heart rate that we want you to, or power if you're on the bike. So that's what a threshold interval would feel like. They're not the nicest intervals to do. Some people would disagree and say they love them, but they're mainly based around your body dealing with lactate. So they tend to feel quite hard. And yeah, you either have a short rest with those to keep your heart rate up, or you'd have a longer rest to let the heart rate drop down and get your body recovering. So that's where you'd see like a walking recovery or like a just stop recovery to let your muscles recover and go again at a longer time at threshold. Or you'd see a really short, like a float recovery or a easy jog recovery. So then you could go again, but it would be a shorter threshold interval. So that's threshold work. Speed work is a little bit different and tends to be based more off feel. So with speed is speed. What a lot of people get wrong is they do their speed work either too long or completely in the wrong zones or paces. For speed, it needs to be short and it needs to be working exactly what it says, speed. So you're going to get a lot longer rests here, because if we say, okay, 10 times 100, and you run the first one, for argument's sake, 12 seconds. All right? And then we say, okay, you're going to rest 30 seconds on these, and then we want you to run again. So we know that your speed now, your fastest 100 is 12 seconds. You only get 30 seconds rest, and you run again, and this time it's 13 seconds. Well, now you're not working your speed. Now you've pulled it back a little bit and you're working sub your max speed for 100 meters. So technically, are we still working speed? I would say we're not. You're now probably looking at more like a heart rate threshold session or muscular strength session. So with speed, we give rests. They're going to be long. It's going to be like 2, 3, 4, sometimes 5 minutes to make sure that when you hit that next speed interval, you are running at your best speed, not at a certain heart rate or below submax speed. Again, we need to look at the distance of interval. So for some people, they can only run 50 meters flat out at their top speed. So 50 meters is all you need to work your speed. Some people go up to 100. Some people 200. I mean, even 200 is a big push even for fit people to be running at their best speed effort for that long. Certainly, if people are saying they're doing max speed work and running 400s, I'd argue that they're not. They're running their max 400 speed, but it's not their true max speed. So that's why you're going to see like full rest recoveries between hard speed work. Next one would be an aerobic interval. Here is where you'll see more likely the very short floating or easy jog recoveries. And what you're trying to do here is you're working submax, so where the heart rate usually will stay either at or just under threshold, and you'll go something like a fartlek session works really, really well here, which is 3 minutes, say, easy jogging, then you go like a 2 minutes, what feels more like a tempo, and then a 1 minute fast. Then you'd come back to the 3 minutes easy jogging, 2 minutes tempo, 1 minute fast, and repeat. You can break those down in lots of different ways. You can do like a 5-3-1, or it depends what you want your goal to be. But that's what we'd see there. And what you're essentially looking for is your heart rate to rise into aerobic levels, and then to get used to going up a little bit, and then recovering, and then up again a little bit, recovering, up again a little bit, recovering. And so your average of your heart rate is all in aerobic levels, but it's instead of just running at a flat aerobic heart rate, you're teaching the body to push on a little bit. 1 minute of fast running isn't enough to put you into like threshold, to put you into trouble, to need to stop, but it's enough to get the body working, and then hopefully your recovery is recovery and your heart rate's dropping back down enough into aerobic, but not too low that you've gone back into any sort of recovered state. So that's what we look for in aerobic interval. You can also get longer ones, stuff like 10 minutes running at aerobic pace, and then you might do maybe a 2 minute tempo interval, which again just rises heart rate slightly, and then you knock it back down to aerobic for 10 minutes. And again, that just teaches the body to deal with basically a bit more waste products that goes on when you raise your heart rate, but deals with it at an aerobic state. And you'd use a lot of, it's probably the most common interval you'll see, and it can be used a lot within different sessions. If you've got like a hilly race to do, like a hilly marathon, then they're really good sessions to be done. So it's all submax, so you're not destroying yourself, but you might do your like harder aerobic intervals on a bit of incline on the treadmill, but then the speed might lower. So you're getting a different type of sort of a different stimulus while you're working aerobically. So that's what we look for in aerobic intervals. Strength intervals, very similar to aerobic intervals, but there's different types of strength that you'd work within running. So, well, just touch on hill strength, which is where you'd be running at inclines, and that would be more aerobic strength. So you'd run, say, on a treadmill 3 minutes at 3%, then recover on the flat, and then go again. There, you wouldn't want your recovery to be, you wouldn't want to stop the recovery because you're not working that hard. You're just working different muscles within the run stride. So we don't need you to recover that much, and you should be able to recover after running 3 minutes at 3%. Running easy on a flat road should feel like recovery. So you might just say, okay, 3 minutes running at incline, 3 minutes easy recovery, or 2 minutes easy recovery, or if you're fit, 1 minute easy recovery. That way you're not letting the heart rate drop back down into recovery too much. It's staying at aerobic levels, and then when you're going back to your incline work, you're going at a heart rate that's enough to hold you running, so you're maintaining good form, and getting actual strength. So the muscles that you want to be using for hill running, which we would describe as strength running, are getting enough time to work and actually be used properly, and then back down again to recover and then go again. So that's more of a how much time do you need for your muscles to recover? And this is all based off mainly feel. Like, certainly I think strength work and speed work should be more about what the athlete feels than what the coach has programmed. So let's go back to speed. Let's say you're doing 10 by 50s and you've been given 2 minutes rest, but 2 minutes you still don't feel like you've recovered enough in 2 minutes, then take more. Like, you need to get back to where you feel you are completely recovered to run absolutely full speed again. And that's similar with the strength work. Is if your muscles feel absolutely cooked and you're going to fall into poor form and you're not going to get, it's not going to be a strength interval, it's going to be a survival interval, then you can extend recovery and go back, take it down a little bit further, and just make sure the next one you run at an incline is good and you're actually getting strength from it. The other type of strength would be sort of max speed strength. So again, we're looking at short, sharp intervals again on incline. So this might be where you have the incline jacked right up. We're talking like 10, 11%, and you stick it at quite a hard pace. And this sort of pace should feel like if you hold on any longer than 30 seconds, you're going to fly off the back of it. And then, so you'd run hard, 30 seconds, muscles screaming, heart rate spikes after you finish the interval, because 30 seconds is not too, is a short enough time for your heart rate to sort of catch up with the muscles, what the demand that they're calling. So 30 seconds all in up the incline, and then you would recover off the treadmill. Again, because we're working on maximal work, you recover off it for a longer time. So it might be 2 minutes just standing, rest, let the muscles recover, let the lactate get out of the legs or be reused back as fuel, let the heart rate come back down to a recovered state so that you can go again at your max strength effort, and then jump back on the treadmill, go again hard as you can, 30 seconds, all in, feel like you're going to fly off the back, jump off the treadmill, rest, recover. And that is how you would see that. So there's sort of an example of where we'd use a complete stopping rest. If you're doing, say, hill sprints and you've been given 6 to 8 reps of these hard hill sprints, but at rep 4 you just feel absolutely gone, well then carrying on isn't going to give you any benefit. You're not going to get any more strength from it. You're going to really raise your chances of injury. So again, that's where it comes down to the athlete to say, okay, I've gone all in here, I've got strength work out of it, that's the aim of the session. If I continue, I'm going to really raise my chance of getting injured, and it's not going to be strength work. Enough, stop. So again, it comes down to the athlete to feel that. The last type of interval, which I use a lot of, and I'm a huge fan of it, is run economy intervals. And these are mainly quite short. They're definitely sub-max. You might know these as strides, or during a long run, you might just chuck in like 5 seconds of really high cadence work into 15 seconds easy, and times it by 4 or 5. These are all about running muscles, and making sure that we're using the run muscles that we want to use. If you're going on a long run and you're just plodding away, muscles that aren't sort of, let's use the word switched on. Don't like using the word switched on with muscles, but basically muscles that should be working when running start to not get lazy, and other larger muscle groups take over, then it can basically form bad habits. So we use run economy intervals to get the runner to be using the muscles that we want them to use while they're running. Strides are a good example of these, and I usually always have them in a warm-up, and the past sort of 12 months, a bit more, I've started to put them in back end of long runs as well. It's also quite nice for the runner to break it up and to have something else to focus on while they're doing their long runs. And the rest on these should definitely be an easy jog or continuing at your aerobic pace. If you're doing strides or run economy intervals that are pushing you up to near maximal levels with your heart rate or speed, or making your muscles burn, then they're probably a little bit too long. So you're going to look at maybe max I'd put a stride in for is like 40 seconds, and that'll be a building stride. So 10 seconds run, 10 seconds a bit faster, 10 seconds a bit faster again, 10 seconds peak speed, and then back down to easy. And you're simply just stimulating the running muscles that we want to be using while we're running. So they're run economy intervals, and those 5 different intervals are what you most commonly are going to see. And if people are saying they're doing speed work, and then they tell you what they're doing, and it's like 400s and 0 rest, then they're not really doing speed work, they're doing threshold work. Aerobic intervals are going to be longer, they're going to be shorter rest, but your heart rate isn't going to go as high during the intervals, and you're going to get a pretty much a longer sort of nice wavy heart rate line you'll see in training peaks. Threshold work, you're going to see heart rate spike. It might maintain for a while during your peak fitness and then recover back down way below threshold, so back into recovery zones, and then spike again. Your strength work, you won't actually see that much of a change in heart rate. You might see a delayed spike, but it won't be for too long. That's more about how your muscles are feeling. And again, recovery on that needs to be long, needs to be enough for your muscles to feel recovered. Shouldn't be starting the next interval with jelly legs or feeling like you can't do it. You really want to get strength out of that interval, so make sure your muscles are in a place to be strong and go. And then the run economy intervals, where we definitely shouldn't see the heart rate spiking up too high. You don't need that much recovery for them. They can be put into long runs, so running at an easy aerobic pace, chuck those in, and then you should be able to run back at your easy aerobic pace more than happily enough. If you're doing run economy intervals and you need to walk after them, then they're probably not doing what they need to be doing. Cool, I hope that helps ads, and no doubt we're going to get a load more questions in from you. So that is episode 2 of the Run Strong podcast. We're going to get Rob Jones back for the next one. He should be my co-host through all of these. Give him a let off today, as he's coming back from an epic 4th place in Ultra X Jordan. He'll come back on. I'm going to ask him a ton of questions about Ultra X, and our next show will be a topic show that we will want you to send in questions for. So we're doing topic shows followed by question shows. That's how this podcast is going to work. We want to make it as interactive as possible. So get in touch with us on Instagram at IFEndurance. You can get in touch with us personally. Rob Jones is now changed Instagram to Rob Jones Endurance. I am Tom Walker Fitness. Send us your questions, listen to the show, rate us. Please share with anyone that you think might find interesting. And we'll be back with episode 3 for your next show. Thanks for listening, guys. Take care.